What is the future of Memorial Stadium looking like? We will talk about it next.
You are Locked On Nebraska, your daily Nebraska Cornhuskers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And thanks for making Locked On Nebraska your first listen every day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts and, of course, on YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 with any winning $5 bet. Head to FanDuel.com/locked on and get yourself started.
Okay, hello. Mitch Sherman here. Connor Happer is with me. It is Thursday, another Thursday in May. We're in the middle of May, getting past the middle of May. Connor, today we want to talk about Memorial Stadium. As you said in the open, what is the future of Memorial Stadium? We all know that Trev Alberts surveyed Nebraska fans a couple of years ago, devised a plan to renovate and modernize the entire stadium. They are scheduled as of now to remove the South Stadium after the next football season. So reduced capacity is on the table, certainly for 2025, maybe 2026. It's a big project set to cost $450 million, and that's before construction has even begun. Possible that additional phases and costs could come down the road, maybe inside the facility, perhaps even outside the facility. You could be looking at a significantly higher price tag. But Trev Alberts, if you haven't noticed, is gone. He's no longer here. Troy Dannen is been in this spot for almost 2 months. He is taking into consideration what to do. The Regents have authorized Nebraska to move forward with the architectural plans for renovation. But what happens now? We're coming up on a football season. That period of time to get the demolition crew out is not all that far away. The money is in the works to be coming in, but clearly it's not all there. This is the football program's project. It is the state's project, the university's project, but as much as anything else, this was Trev Alberts' project. So will it be Troy Dannen's project, and in what way will it look like what Trev dreamed up and devised? What do you think, Connor, that Nebraska ought to do? What is best for the University of Nebraska and the football program at this juncture?
Well, they got to do something. I mean, South Stadium is, as has been discussed, is in not the best condition. And it never really has been. It's never been a modern, piece of the stadium as we, pull that thing together. The whole stadium is like a puzzle piece, and it kind of just is representative of times and various places. So they need to do something over there. Is the answer to tear down the entire thing and do the project as we initially thought it was going to be, as it was announced, during last football season or before last football season?
It was during the season. Yeah.
I mean, it's a long time ago. It's hard to even kind of, remember that vision at this point. But there was a lot to it. So, and by the way, you mentioned the price tag at the beginning, $450 million. I mean, it would be more than that. I would imagine as prices kind of continue to go up. So I find it funny that Dannen in his first, week on the job is like, hey, what do you think about the stadium project? And really the through line had always been, well, I got to get my head around it a little bit. Last time we heard him talk about this on the Husker Sports Network, he seemed to have his head around it a little bit. And it wasn't business as usual, but it was, something is going to happen to it. There's no doubt that Nebraska can't do nothing, right? They have to move forward in some way, shape, or form. It feels like a lot, especially with the change in leadership, to do the plan that Trev kind of laid forth. I think it's an opportunity for the new Nebraska leadership led by Dannen to say, okay, let's see what parts of these ideas are feasible, what parts of these ideas that we like. And I think the first thing is identify the things that you need to do the most And maybe that's just back of house stuff. Maybe that's, Wi-Fi in the stadium and making it a little easier to get around for fans. But there's going to be something happening over there. But I feel like I doubt that it'll be the full scale project that we saw almost a year ago.
Yeah, I want to throw a couple things at you. Looking at the news here from last month, University of Missouri Board of Curators,
Yeah.
$250 million stadium design. They've actually got the Omaha-based firm DLR architectural firm that is leading that project. University of Kansas is not the same kind of football program historically as Nebraska. Now, Kansas has been doing some nice things in the sport recently, but I believe that cost is $800 million. Okay, I'm seeing $448 million.
And they're taking down their entire stadium, and they'll be displaced for, I think, 2 years. And they're going to play most of their games at Arrowhead and a couple at Sporting Kansas City's field. But they went total tear down rebuild at Kansas.
How about Northwestern football stadium?
Same thing with them.
$800 million at Northwestern to redo the stadium, and they're going to be playing in their indoor facility for a while.
On their outdoor lakeside practice field for all of their games except two this year, where they'll play at Wrigley Field, which has been mostly a disaster in the games that have been played at Wrigley Field because there's not enough space to fit an entire football field on it.
Yeah, you don't want to run into a wall after catching a touchdown pass. I'll put it this way. I think there's a narrative out there in college football that's seeping into the Nebraska mindset that now is not the time to undertake a large project, hundreds of millions of dollars plus, because other people aren't doing this, because this is not the direction that college sports is going, because college sports is sending all of its money toward NIL. And I'm calling BS on that. I'm saying, look at Missouri, look at Kansas, look at Northwestern. Are any of these programs in the eyes of Nebraska fans as prestigious as Nebraska? No. And all of them are undertaking giant projects. In the case of Northwestern, almost twice as significant in a cost situation as what Nebraska has proposed. So look, we're a fiscally conservative state. I get it. The university has budget issues. But I think Trev was certainly on the right track. And this is just my opinion. Sometime relatively soon, there's going to have to be a decision made on this. The Regents are getting back together on June 20th, which is the 3-month anniversary of the date that Troy Dannen took over at Nebraska. And I think by then, we'll kind of know what direction Nebraska is going, because that's like 6 months out from the end of the stadium. Actually, it's end of the season. Actually, it's 5 months out from the end of the home season. And if you're doing this and the South Stadium's coming down and you're trying to minimize the amount of time that you're going to be displaced, like the day that Nebraska plays Wisconsin, like that night, as we're leaving the press box, they're going to be starting demo work or demo prep on the South Stadium if this is a reality. So I would not get caught up in the mindset that like all money needs to go to NIL. It doesn't cost $500 million. It never will cost $500 million to pay your football team. I get it. There's donor fatigue, but I also think that it's important to look to the future, and that the benefits of a renovated stadium will pay dividends toward the same efforts that NIL is seeking to give you an advantage in, if that makes any sense.
And Nebraska's been a place that has been very proud of its tradition of being fully sustainable by itself as an athletic department. And I don't think it's the worst thing in the world to ask the state for a little help in a situation like this. And I think it would have to probably happen. I'm glad you mentioned the Missouri thing and all those other stadium projects around the country, because I saw that a few weeks ago, and I did a whole segment on the show, and I just re-asked Husker fans, since it hasn't been on people's minds, like, do you guys not want this? Like this would be, if you're a fan, you should absolutely want it. It's a no-brainer. You should want your stadium to be easily accessible for fans. and just easier generally to get around and set up for, for the future, hopefully for a long time. I know things move fast, but absolutely, like, you should want that if you're a fan. So yeah.
And if not now, when? It's a 100-year-old stadium. Like, some
Exactly.
things are going to have to be done to it. So, and I would expect that Nebraska is going to go in that direction of doing some things to the stadium. Well, the question is, how deep are they going to dive in? And sometime in the near future, we should have some answers. So,
Hey, if you're giving me the option though, Mitch, of like of either full go or no go at all, like, it's easy, full go. I mean,
I agree.
now that's not, I don't think that's what we're dealing with here, but it's absolutely got to be, something's got to move in that category for
I
sure.
think the train is too far out of the station to just say no go. I mean, there's donor dollars. Of course, they're not 450 million in donor dollars, but there's donor dollars that are committed to this, and it's difficult to then say to those donors, "Hey, by the way, that's those millions that you sent us, we're not going to do that project." It's not as simple as just like writing them a check and giving them their money back. That's not
Right.
that's not really the way that it works in the philanthropic world, but. Nebraska knows much more about that than I do. So we'll await their path on this thing as it goes forward. But definitely something to watch over the early portion of the summer. So after the break, we're going to talk more about what Troy Dannen's priorities ought to be early in his time at Nebraska. Now that he's nearing the 2-month mark, he's had the opportunity to get his arms around things, as you said, Connor. And what else? What else should Troy Dannen have his mind on over the rest of 2024 and early 2025? That's next on the Locked On Nebraska podcast.
Hey, Tapper, for the FanDuel Sportsbook, it is playoff time in the NBA and in the NHL. Baseball's in full swing, and FanDuel is your place to bet on every game. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed, $150, win or lose. So even take a look at the NBA slate tonight. One of my great traditions during the months of May and June is to stay up way past my bedtime and watch NBA games, and tonight is no different, with the Nuggets and the Timberwolves going for game number 6. So the Nuggets are plus 2.5 tonight. If you're interested, Nikola Jokic is the MVP. Seems like there's a little blood in the water in that series. Take a look on the FanDuel Sportsbook. Once again, new customers, $150, win or lose, and you could bet on whatever you'd like. Just visit FanDuel.com/locked-on and make your first bet an automatic win. That is with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. All right, welcome back. A quick reminder to please subscribe and follow us on Twitter at LockedOnNEB. You can email as well, LockedOnNEB@gmail.com. We are back here on a Thursday. Busy times, Nebraska baseball. We might touch on them in a few minutes, but they will start their final regular season series this weekend at Michigan State, trying to win a Big Ten championship. Nebraska is in the top 2 with a national linebacker recruit, Dawson Merritt. The top 2, Nebraska and Alabama. That's a pretty good look right now. So there's kind of what's on the radar, I think, for the next day. Is it
good? Is it good to be with Alabama as a finalist? I saw one of the prediction machines, like the algorithm that predicts these things. I believe it was on 3, which reported on Wednesday that Merritt is down to Nebraska and Alabama. It was like 93.7% to Alabama.
It's good company to be in, I guess.
Yeah. He's a Kansas City kid. Father's on the Chiefs staff. So Nebraska has the geographical thing going for it.
So at least there's that. And he liked his visit, because everybody likes their visits, Mitch. We talked about that yesterday.
You mentioned being up late watching NBA. So did you stay up late and flip on, I believe it was on CBS Sports Network, the Pro Volleyball Federation Final Four in our fine state last night?
They were just going, I think, into the 3rd set when the Mavs Thunder game ended, and I thought, all right, do I have a little bit more capacity to hold for sports for the day? And the answer was sadly no, I did not. But what a comeback for them last night. The reverse sweep for the Supernovas.
Possibly the first ever mention of the Pro Volleyball Federation on the Locked On Sports podcast network. But hey, we're a volleyball state here in Nebraska, and encourage Nebraska volleyball fans to get out and watch the Omaha Supernovas on Saturday afternoon at the CHI Health Center, going for the first ever league championship. It ought to be exciting. I might head down there.
$1 million on the line. It's a pretty big deal for those players. That's for sure.
I think Paul Sunderland, the play-by-play guy on the broadcast last night, mentioned he might have been under contract to mention the $1 million that goes to the winning team a million times during the broadcast.
Well, it's definitely makes it different.
It's a big deal. It's a big deal. Yeah.
So we were just talking about Troy Dannen, and obviously I think the stadium is the big one for him to answer right away. What else? What else is on the radar? We've talked about previously, kind of the position that Nebraska is in, and how they frame themselves as an athletic department at the moment. It doesn't seem like there's any pressing, coaching decisions to have to be made. What is it for Dannen? Maybe not after the stadium, but in congruency with the stadium project that he needs to focus his attention on.
Yeah, and AD's got he's to juggle a lot of things. So while he's thinking about the stadium, he needs to be thinking about other things too. And I know he's talked about some facility stuff, like finishing up the outdoor track situation, which has incurred delays that, wouldn't be acceptable if it was football or basketball, but because it's track and there's not as many people watching, it's been deemed hey, we can push this thing away, but no, I mean, go finish that. I don't know where I would put that on his priorities. Yeah, you want to get it done for sure, but I mean, I think his other priorities have to involve things outside of facilities. And I posed this question when we were talking about the show today, and I'm not sure I have a great answer because, as you said, Connor, things are good generally, despite the consecutive losing seasons with football. Things are good with the direction that Matt Rule is going. You got Fred Hoiberg and Amy Williams coming off of NCAA tournament runs. Will Bolt's team is seemingly headed back to the NCAA tournament. So, hey, softball, volleyball, wrestling, all of these things at Nebraska are in pretty good shape right now. And it's reflected in their top 10 standing in the Directors Cup this year. Probably going to be one of the highest finishes ever for Nebraska as an all-around athletic department. So is it something beyond that? I think it always comes back to football, and it comes back to Rule. And Dannen came into Nebraska in a good position with Matt Rule because they've got the shared history together from the American Athletic Conference. Dannen was the AD at Tulane when Rule was the head coach at Temple, and they have a common, very close friend in Pat Kraft, the Penn State AD. But he's got to continue to work on that relationship, and he needs to make sure that Dannen does that. He's ahead of the curve in keeping Matt Rule happy, in continuing to serve the football program in the best way possible, whatever that is. So to me, that's a priority, not super specific though.
Well, I think, I mean, how do you do it right? And I think we've talked about this before, but it's just, I think Rule, as good as anybody in the athletic department right now, has a pretty good understanding of what Nebraska needs, not only because he runs the football program and that's kind of the window inside, but also because he's been around now, and I think he's picked that up. He's picked the state up really quickly and things like that. So I think those two can kind of use each other as sounding boards. And I'm not saying just grant Rule every wish he has, but it's probably not far off from that. And I don't think Rule would overstep his bounds and ask for support that was not feasible for the athletic department to give him, whether it's monetary or whatever it might be. So I think it's those two kind of working together and shaping the rest of the deal. Like it or not, I mean, Rule is toward the top, if not the top of the food chain, sort of in the vision of the athletic department as a whole.
Oh yeah, he's at the top. And the thing he's going to ask for is support for his staff. That's the thing. I mean, yeah, he's going to want a recruiting budget. He's going to want an airplane. He's going to want, the school to roll out the red carpet when recruits come in. That's all a given. And every head coach wants that. What he wants, I think, as much as anyone or more than anyone, is the ability for Nebraska to support the people that he supports who work for him. And, a perfect example of this and what Trev Alberts did for him, we go back to Kristen Coggin, the director of performance nutrition, who I wrote about last week on The Athletic. And she told the story about coming to meet Matt Rule for the first time when she was at South Carolina. And she came for an interview and sat in Matt Rule's office. And he said, "What do you need to be the best in at your job in the country?" And she took a piece of paper and a pen and she wrote it out like an outline. And I think mostly what she was asking for was her own staff. And she has 7 full-time people there, including herself.
Yeah.
So that's unheard of, or has been unheard of in the nutrition world. And Rule said he felt a little nervous as he took it to Trev Alberts, but to Trev's credit, he said, "Yep, there you go." And they gave Rule what he needed to give Coggin what she needed. So that has to continue. That level of support has to continue. If it's in strength and conditioning, if it's in the area of recovery or athletic medicine, whatever it might be, and he goes to Troy Dannen with some requests that seem like they're above and beyond what Dannen has been used to granting in college sports, like, okay, you're at Nebraska now. You play in this 18-team conference that makes ridiculous amounts of money. You're going to have to say yes to that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I think it's more so the general understanding that whatever you put into football to be able to get wins out of that is going to be worth it as long as you do get wins out of it, right? The investment into the football program is the most important thing you could do. And I think that's probably pretty well understood.
Also, I think you should do whatever John Cook wants. That's a priority for Troy Dannen that I think he probably understood before he even took the job. Like, whatever he needs, whatever he wants, whatever support he asks for, within reason, you do all you can. And Trev set a precedent for that one, of course, with the Memorial Stadium volleyball match last year. So they're carrying the flag for Nebraska athletics on a national stage. John Cook's program is, alongside football, which always carries the flag. But do what you can there, and you'll be off on the right foot. So, all right, after the break, we're going to talk about another one of Troy Dannen's programs that's in the spotlight right now, and that's Will Bolt's baseball program. I had a chance to visit Haymarket Park and talk with Will Bolt on Wednesday. We'll get into a little bit of that. But first, are you watching Fox Sports or ESPN on your TV all day? Do you have to turn down the volume with all that shouting? If so, make the switch to Locked On Sports today. It's a free 24/7 sports streaming channel programmed for you to bring you the biggest sports stories without all the screaming. Locked On Sports today brings you can't-miss analysis, opinions, and news, streaming 24/7 on YouTube or the free Fire TV Channels app. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Okay, Connor. Welcome back, everyone, for our third and final segment on this Thursday. Nebraska baseball opens a series on Thursday night in East Lansing, Michigan. If you remember watching on Big Ten Plus or listening to the Nebraska radio broadcast the last time the Huskers went to see the Spartans, there's a hill in right field of that stadium. And I was reminded of that during the interviews that took place at Haymarket Park before Nebraska got on its charter plane Wednesday in Lincoln. We were talking to Garrett Anglum, who could be out there in right field, and Will Bolt about what to do, how to deal with that hill. You don't want to lose a game because you weren't prepared to run uphill and catch a fly ball in the late innings. So Huskers have a lot at stake here in this series at Michigan State. They are one game behind Illinois going into this final weekend. So 3 wins by Nebraska, 2 wins by Illinois creates a tie for the Big Ten championship. Nebraska would then get the number 1 seed in in Omaha. And if the Huskers can find a way to finish 2 games better than the Illini this weekend, or 1.5, then Will Bolt's team would win the league outright, which is, quite an accomplishment. Huskers trying to get back to the tournament for the 6th time as a member of the Big Ten, and the first time since 2021 when they went to Arkansas and took the Hogs to the final game of a regional.
Yeah, oh man, that was a heck of a time. People are dying to get some sort of semblance of that back again. It's no, you definitely, by the way, don't want to lose a game because you ran over a hill in the wrong direction. That's absolutely true. You listen to people though, Mitch, and it's just been kind of a roller coaster. You listen to people who know what they're talking about in college baseball, bracketologists, whatever you might call them. They still have the opinion that Nebraska has this outside, super outside shot to have a regional at Haymarket Park. I don't know.
That would take what? Winning the Big Ten tournament?
It would probably take sweeping through the Big Ten tournament at this point. Either way, I think you could take some solace in the idea that you're a lock for the NCAA tournament at this point. And you were in the Big Ten title race till the last weekend. I don't expect Nebraska to lose a series this weekend. In fact, I expect them to win it. So I think they'll be right in the mix to win the conference, which is like you said, Mitch, a great accomplishment for a team that we weren't sure of this year. We knew they lost a couple high round draft picks last year, and they've been able to come back and put a pretty solid team together.
So I asked Will Bolt on Wednesday about the national landscape, because Nebraska's had this roller coaster ride of a season, and I look at Nebraska's RPI, and thanks to a good slate of opponents in February and some success on the road, Nebraska's RPI is in good shape. It's tops in the Big Ten, in the low 30s. And I started looking around and I saw Florida right around Nebraska in the RPI, Vanderbilt, TCU, Texas, LSU they're all there in like the 28 to 44 range in the RPI. So that seemed kind of strange to me. And it made me think it's not just Nebraska. Like there's these other programs that have higher expectations than Nebraska. All of those schools that I mentioned are regulars in Omaha in June. Nebraska hasn't been to the College World Series since 2005. So I asked Will Bolt, who has coached in the SEC as an assistant coach and has been around the state of Texas and other places, if he could explain what was going on in his sport to end up with all of these superpower programs jumbled up around Nebraska with their postseason resumes. And here's what Will Bolt had to say. I want to get a reaction from you at the end of this.
Everybody's good. Mm-hmm. That's why. It's because everybody has talent. Everybody has more access to talent than we've ever had in this sport, and it's hard to win. I mean, when everybody's got talent, and the line is pretty razor thin to win and lose most days. I think that's why there's far more parity in the game than there has been in the history of college baseball. I would say, just without speaking too much in hyperbole, I think that's absolutely true. Everybody's good.
Yeah, it's hard to it's hard to, like, I guess, throw a blanket over the entire, what do all those teams have sort of in common. Like I think about LSU from last year, and they had the top 2 picks or 2 out of the top 3 picks of the draft, and those guys aren't on the team anymore, Paul Skeens and Dylan Cruz. So like that's important. Florida currently has probably the second most impactful player in the country, and Jack Caglione. They're trying to fight for a postseason berth. I think at this point they don't look like they're going to be anywhere near Omaha. I do think it's an older sport, right? Especially at the moment where guys have just been in college baseball for a while, and I think there's still a little bit of a backup from the COVID year and stuff like that. There's a little bit of NIL going on in the South, so guys will stay around and play more college baseball. But there's no doubt about it. Everybody's got talent now. Now it's just about how much you have, and the best teams in the country have have a frontline starter going on Friday and Saturday, and then three first and second round picks in the middle of their lineup. And Nebraska's not one of those teams right now, but everything else is a step off that, and I think Nebraska firmly goes into that category of teams.
Yeah, I'll just finish it quick with this. And I thought it was going the other direction in college baseball. Not that there wouldn't be parity, not that your mid majors weren't moving up and creating a commitment for the sport. But I thought NIL was going to take the LSUs and Floridas and Texases of the world and turn them into teams that never missed Omaha because they could just go out and buy their rosters. But that doesn't seem to be what's happening, at least so far, as we move boldly ahead. So something interesting to watch in the month of June. Will one of these teams that are normally dominant, but not so much this year, get hot in June and make their way to the College World Series?
Yep.
Or will Nebraska get hot?
Exactly. If you're a College World Series fan, it might be good for you. It might be getting some new blood here in just a couple weeks. All right. Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube, and it's also available on Amazon Fire TV in the free Fire TV channels app. Locked On Sports Today is what it's called. It's here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. Find Locked On Sports Today, now available in the free Amazon Fire TV channels app. Talk to you tomorrow.